Hi again, everyone, and I have one more story to tell. And like the other two, this is autobiographical. It's true insofar as anything from this unreliable narrator is true. And this one has to do with my time in college, where I had developed magical powers. And the magic that I had was subtle but pervasive, which was I could find myself a girlfriend conjured out of nowhere, just poof. And it would happen at almost any time. And most of the people around me were perpetually single, so they'd have a look over and just think, what's going on here? This guy's an idiot. And yeah, there I was with my conjured girlfriend and relationship. That might have been my magical power, or it may have been, on the flip side, the opposite, that no matter how interested someone was in me, I could successfully drive them away within 6 weeks. You could set a timer to it. It was an ability to, I guess, disappoint and fall short of people's expectations after they saw me from a distance. And I could even have people who may have wanted a relationship with me for some time. Once they'd get to know me, that was it. So, I mean, you can kind of tell, if you look at me from the stories I've been telling, I don't know why someone would want to date me. But for some time, I guess they wanted to satisfy their curiosity, and that's, curiosity satisfied, people would move on. When I wasn't in a relationship, the sort of stuff that I do besides, the regular school stuff would be, for example, making music, listening to music, playing those role-playing games with aforesaid bunch of friends and acquaintances, many of whom were perpetually single. And I also like to observe folks and get potentially to know some interesting people here and there to stay in correspondence. And that's gone through to this day. I always like to know interesting people because they're interesting and you can learn from them. And the interaction is rewarding. But there's one other thing that I also liked to do at the time, and that was to go for walks in the woods in the middle of the night. And that is sometime after 10 o'clock, I would just throw on some clothes, whatever. The dorm where I lived was at the edge of the campus, which was in a rural area. So beyond that was just an old orchard and then some hills and some forest and an observatory. And it just really petered out into some fire roads and a bunch of little backwoods paths. And I'd go out there with no lights and no nothing and just try and make my way along one of those little winding paths for, well, there's many possible reasons. Maybe it was to have the experience, whatever that means. The experience might have been to feel fear and reflect on, at arm's length, what fear feels like. Or it may have been to get into my own head for thinking about a bunch of things while being as alone as one could possibly be on a campus with many thousands of other students. Or maybe it was some other purpose, some metaphysical purpose to reflect on. Whatever the reason, I would find myself out in the darkness, in almost absolute darkness, with nothing but a general awareness of space around me with trees and brush and shapes of things, and slowly, one step ahead of the other, feel my way down the path, along this winding path, through ups and downs, over the hills, and just absorb with the senses that I still had what the breeze would feel like, what the sounds were around me, and perhaps go up and feel the bark of a tree, but just sort of take in with the rest of the senses when sight is nothing but a general impression of darkness upon darkness, with this feeling of being very small in a very large space. In a sense, maybe not so different as I remember jumping as a kid off of a sailboat into the ocean to go swimming. And that experience was, that sort of lack of ability to see what's around you, but just have a very general sense of being small in a vast expanse and potentially exposed and vulnerable, but at the same time in control of oneself. So whatever the reason, there's lots of things that fed into it, but it was something that I enjoyed doing. Of course, it's something that I wouldn't have the time to do, along with many of the other things, when I was in a relationship. So time passed, and you could set the timer, which I didn't know at the time because the pattern hadn't established itself well enough for me to know. But the timer was set, and I'm sure I was bringing up my share of disappointments and cringe that would lead to the ultimate end of that relationship. And it did come about 5 weeks later when I found out that she'd been seeing someone back at home the entire time and hadn't broken up with that other person. So I was the side guy, or the other person was the side person, but whatever it was, neither one of us knew about the other. And I thought that was it was time to probably call it quits. And we had a very cringy conversation, and I came to it unusually flat, not really feeling anything in particular, positive or negative, just sort of ambivalent. And that's when I did something smart, but also stupid. And that is that coming to the table with no real feelings, and then having it suggested that we could still be friends, and sort of mulling it over for a moment and thinking, well, no, I don't think so, because I didn't see the point. And then walking away like it's no big deal, didn't sit well. And to explain this, I have to go back into kind of the nature of a relationship. When two people come together in friendship or more, you build a set of common experiences, and you share you build a shared mythology and a shared history together. And while I wasn't fully conscious of what the process was, I'm conscious of having engaged in it and sort of building this, sharing this magic of showing connections and the mythology and the magic of things around us. And that just kind of came naturally to bringing that to a relationship. It's like, here, look at this, my perspective, and see these things for being more than what they just seem to be, because the world is a special place. What I didn't realize is that some of those learnings would be taken away and reinterpreted. And so it was that a couple of weeks after we split, something bad happened in her life. And that was when the connection was made that, this Dulles, he is able to see these connections between unlike things. So this completely unrelated thing is just the sort of thing that he would have been able to foment based on his ability to connect things that aren't connected. So thanks external intuition, thanks to that screw up, it's like, oh, I know just the person who would be capable of doing this sort of thing, not realizing that, it's connections they have meaning that you imbue into them, but it's not meaning that's necessarily, it's not reality in the concrete sense. It's reality in what's internalized. But that got confused. So anyway, word has it that she had planned to come after me with a knife to threaten me to leave her and her family alone from whatever foul magics I was able to conjure. And fortunately, her friends, when found out about this plan and they talked her down, to realize that Dulles is in fact an idiot and not a wielder of magic powers that cause harm to other people. And truth be told, like I said, I was ambivalent about the whole thing. I was over it and back to my listening to music, finding unusual people and interacting with them, observing people, making music, doing schoolwork, and going for walks in the woods alone at night in the dark. It did, however, prompt a review on my part after all of this stuff happened through the grapevine. And when I stopped to think about it, it's like, okay, first I should probably be a little bit more careful about kind of the ideas that I share until I know somebody a little bit better, or entrust a little bit better that they understand that I'm not some weird magic conjuration guy, that the sort of stuff I do is very, it's just intuition. It's not anything special. And then the other thing is that I looked at the going out alone in the woods in the middle of the night in the dark seemed to be kind of a bad look. And after giving that some thought, I gave that up. So I would still go out for walks, but it wouldn't be those kind of walks, something a little bit more conventional, maybe down to the student union or something on my own. Be in my own thoughts, but it's not something as bizarre as going out alone into the middle of the dark in the middle of the night. Anyway, as is the case with these relationships that were conjured and magically dissolved by my own inability to keep them together, I don't think we ever met in any meaningful way again, except for one correspondent note a couple of weeks after all that stuff blew over. And after that, it was on to, the next adventures. But I did learn to be more cautious. And if it seems like I've thrown around a lot of different possibilities, it's because I'm not quite sure how to interpret the meaning or what to take away from it, other than these things happened and there are meanings that can be imbued into them, or it was just, as with all of the stories, maybe it was just Dulles being odd and delusional and making stuff up as the way that his overactive imagination will do, as opposed to having any greater meaning or effect in the world. But there you have it. 3 stories to consider and 3 perspectives. And thanks again for listening, and may you have a good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you may be. Bye for now.